The flashlight beam cut through the darkness like a knife. Thomas Henley had worked as a night security guard at Kensington Palace for 17 years. But he had never seen this door before. It was just past 2 in the morning. The kind of hour when the palace felt less like a museum and more like a tomb. Thomas was doing his usual rounds through the basement storage area when his boot caught on something. A loose floor tile. He knelt down, shined his light along the ground. That's when he saw it. Behind a stack of old filing cabinets that hadn't been moved in decades, there was a wooden door. Small, almost hidden. The kind of door you'd walk past 1,000 times without noticing. His heart started to race. Thomas had heard the stories. Of course, every guard had. Whispers about sealed rooms, forgotten archives, things the royal family wanted to keep buried. But he'd always thought they were just stories, the kind of legends that grow in old buildings. He pulled the cabinets aside. Dust exploded into the air, making him cough. The door was solid oak, dark with age. No handle. Just a small keyhole that looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Thomas tried the door. Locked. He should have walked away. Should have reported it in the morning. That's what protocol said. But something stopped him. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the fact that after 17 years of walking the same halls, he'd finally found something new. He went back to his office. Dug through the drawer where they kept old keys. Maintenance keys. Archive keys. Keys that opened doors no one remembered anymore. The third key fit. Before we go further, if you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button. We share the most incredible true stories you've never heard before. You won't want to miss what happens next. The door opened with a sound like a sigh. Like it had been holding its breath for years. Thomas stepped inside. The room was small. Maybe 10 feet by 10 feet. No windows. The air was stale and cold, like opening a crypt. His flashlight swept across the space. Boxes. Dozens of them. Stacked floor to ceiling, along every wall. But these weren't ordinary storage boxes. They were wooden crates. The kind used for valuable things. Important things. Thomas moved closer. His hands were shaking now. Each crate had a date written on it in faded ink. 1995. 1996. 1997. His blood ran cold. That was the year Princess Diana died. He opened the nearest crate. Inside were letters. Hundreds of them. All in envelopes. All unopened. The handwriting on the front was elegant, flowing, feminine. Thomas picked one up. His hands trembled as he read the name written on the envelope. To His Royal Highness, Prince Charles. Another one. To Her Majesty, the Queen. Another. To Prince William. They were all from Diana. Letters written in her final years. Maybe her final months. And none of them had ever been opened. Thomas felt like he couldn't breathe. The room suddenly felt smaller, colder. He had stumbled onto something enormous, something that was meant to stay hidden. But why? Why would anyone hide Diana's letters? What could she have possibly written that was so dangerous, so secret, that they needed to be locked away in the darkness? He reached for another letter. This one was addressed simply, "To whom it may concern." His fingers slid under the envelope's edge. After all these years, someone was finally going to read what Princess Diana had wanted the world to know. But before he could open it, he heard something that made his heart stop. Footsteps. Coming down the basement stairs, Thomas killed his flashlight. Darkness swallowed him whole. The footsteps were slow, deliberate. Not the quick pace of another security guard doing rounds. These were the footsteps of someone who knew exactly where they were going. Thomas pressed himself against the wall. His heart hammered so hard he was sure whoever was out there could hear it. The letter from Diana was still in his hand, unopened. The footsteps stopped, right outside the hidden door. Then a voice, male, older, British accent sharp as glass. "I know you're in there." Thomas held his breath. Every muscle in his body locked up. "Come out now, and bring nothing with you." Thomas had two choices: stay hidden and hope the man went away, or face whatever was waiting for him outside. He looked down at the letter in his hand. At the crates full of Diana's words that no one had ever read, he slid the letter into his jacket pocket. Then he turned his flashlight back on and stepped out of the room. The man standing in the basement corridor was tall, 60s maybe, gray hair combed perfectly, wearing an expensive suit even at this hour. His eyes were the coldest thing Thomas had ever seen. "Who are you?" Thomas asked. His voice came out smaller than he wanted. "I could ask you the same question," the man said. "But I already know. Thomas Henley. Night security. 17 years of service. Divorced, one daughter. Lives in a flat in Wimbledon." Thomas felt his stomach drop. What matters is what you just found. And more importantly, what you're going to do about it." "I don't know what you're talking about," the man smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Don't insult my intelligence. You opened the room. You saw the letters, and now we have a problem." Thomas's mind raced. This wasn't a royal staff member. This was something else. Someone else. The kind of person who showed up when secrets were about to come out. "Those letters are private property," the man continued. "They belong to the royal family. You had no right to access them." "Then why are they hidden?" Thomas shot back. "Why are they locked in a room that's not on any palace map?" The man's expression didn't change. "Some things are hidden for good reason." "What reason?" "That's not your concern." Thomas thought about the letters. Hundreds of them. All unopened. All from a woman who died 27 years ago. A woman the whole world had loved. A woman who might have had something important to say before she died. "What's in them?" Thomas asked. "What did she write that's so dangerous?" "Again, not your concern." "Think it is." "I think the public has a right to know." The man took a step forward. His voice dropped lower, quieter, more threatening. "Mr. Henley, let me be very clear. You have a daughter, Emily. She's 23. Works at a bookshop in Camden. Lives alone." Thomas felt like he'd been punched in the chest. "Don't you dare, I'm not threatening anyone," the man said smoothly. "I'm simply reminding you that you have a life. A good life. A quiet life. And it would be a shame if that changed because you made a very stupid decision tonight." The two men stared at each other. The basement was silent except for the hum of the old heating pipes. "What do you want from me?" Thomas asked. "I want you to forget you ever found that room. I want you to go back to your rounds. Finish your shift. Go home. And never speak of this again. And if I don't..." The man tilted his head slightly. "Then you'll find that jobs are difficult to come by at your age, especially with certain marks on your record. And your daughter might find that London isn't as safe as she thought." Thomas felt rage building in his chest. But he also felt fear, real fear. This man wasn't bluffing. "One more thing," the man said. He held out his hand. "Whatever you took from that room, give it to me." Thomas's hand moved instinctively to his jacket pocket, where Diana's letter was hidden. The man saw the gesture, smiled that cold smile again. Now, Thomas had seconds to decide. Hand over the letter and walk away, or fight for something he didn't fully understand yet. He thought about Diana, about how she died so young, about all those unopened letters, about secrets that powerful people wanted to keep buried. He made his choice. "I didn't take anything," Thomas lied. The man's eyes narrowed. "I'm going to give you one more chance. Search me if you want." "I didn't take anything." For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then the man stepped aside. "Go home, Mr. Henley, and remember what I said." Thomas walked past him, climbed the stairs, finished his rounds like nothing had happened. But his heart didn't stop racing, not even when he left the palace at dawn, because in his pocket he carried a secret that someone was willing to threaten his family to keep hidden, and he was going to find out why. Thomas didn't go home. Instead, he drove to a 24-hour cafe in South London, the kind of place where nobody asked questions. He ordered coffee he didn't drink and sat in the back corner where the security cameras couldn't see him. His hands still shook as he pulled the envelope from his jacket. The paper was Expensive, cream-colored, heavy Diana's. Handwriting flowed across the front in blue ink. To whom it may concern, Thomas turned it over. The seal on the back had never been broken. For 27 years, this letter had waited in the darkness, waiting for someone to find it, to read it, to know what she wanted to say. He slid his finger under the seal. The paper tore with a soft whisper. Inside was a single sheet, the same cream-colored paper, the same blue ink, but the handwriting was different here, rushed, urgent, like she'd been afraid. She'd run out of time. Thomas began to read. If you are reading this, then something has happened to me. I write this in August of 1997, and I write it because I am afraid. Not of car accidents or paparazzi or public scandal. I am afraid of the people closest to me. The people who smile at me during the day and plot against me at night. Thomas felt his mouth go dry. He kept reading. There are things I know. Things I've seen. Things I've heard in conversations I wasn't supposed to be part of. I have tried to speak out. I have tried to tell my story. But every time I do, I am called unstable, paranoid, mad. They have a way of making the truth sound like delusion. The coffee shop felt suddenly colder. Thomas glanced around. The only other people there were a homeless man sleeping in the corner and a student studying for exams. Nobody was watching him. But he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being followed. He continued reading. I have written letters to my sons, to Charles, to the Queen. In those letters, I have told them everything. Names, dates, evidence. But I fear those letters will never be read. I fear they will be destroyed or hidden. So I write this as well. A final insurance policy. Thomas's heart was pounding now. If something happens to me, it will not be an accident. It will be made to look like one. But please, whoever finds this, please know that I loved my sons more than my own life, and I would never leave them unless I was taken from them. The letter continued for another paragraph. Diana wrote about feeling watched, about her phones being tapped, about conversations with palace staff who warned her to be careful. She wrote about a meeting in July where someone had told her, very directly, that she was becoming a problem that needed to be solved. She didn't name the person, but she hinted that the person was very close to the royal family, someone with power, someone who saw her as a threat. The letter ended with a single line. The truth is in the other letters. All of them. Please make sure they are read. The world deserves to know. My sons deserve to know. I deserve to be heard. It was signed simply, Diana. Thomas set the letter down. His coffee had gone cold. The sun was starting to rise outside, painting the London sky in shades of gray and pink. He understood now why the letters had been hidden. Why that man in the expensive suit had threatened his daughter? Diana hadn't just written love letters to her family. She'd written evidence, accusations, truth that powerful people wanted to stay buried. But what was he supposed to do with it? He was just a security guard. Nobody. If he went to the police, they'd either laugh him out of the station, or the letter would disappear before anyone important saw it. If he went to the press, they'd call it a hoax, a forgery. They'd destroyed his credibility before the story even got out, and that man knew. Where his daughter lived, Thomas felt trapped. He had the most important piece of paper he'd ever held in his life, and he had no idea what to do with it. He pulled out his phone, stared at the screen. There was one person he could call, someone who might actually help, someone who'd known Diana, who'd cared about her. But calling that person would change everything. Once he made that call, there was no going back. No pretending this never happened. No quiet life. The man in the suit's words echoed in his head. You have a good life. A quiet life. It would be a shame if that changed. Thomas thought about his daughter, Emily, 23 years old. Her whole life ahead of her, safe, happy, unaware that her father was sitting in a cafe holding a letter from a dead princess that could destroy his life and hers. Then he thought about Diana, young, vibrant, dead at 36. Her voice silenced. Her truth buried. He thought about those other letters. Hundreds of them. Still sitting in that hidden room? Still unopened? Still unread? Someone had to speak for her. Someone had to make sure she was finally heard. Thomas picked up his phone. His finger hovered over the contact. One call. That's all it would take. He pressed dial. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a voice answered, groggy, confused. Hello? Thomas took a deep breath. My name is Thomas Henley. I'm a security guard at Kensington Palace, and I found something you need to see. Asterisk, the woman Thomas called was named Sarah Pemberton. She had been Diana's private secretary for 2 years before the princess died. One of the few people Diana had truly trusted. They met in Hyde Park at 8 in the morning. Neutral ground. Public enough to be safe, quiet enough to talk. Sarah was 64 now. Gray hair pulled back in a tight bun. Sharp eyes that had seen too much. When Thomas showed her the letter, her hands trembled so badly, she almost dropped it. My God, she whispered. Her handwriting. I'd know it anywhere. She read in silence. Thomas watched her face change. Saw the grief there. The anger. The recognition of something she'd suspected for 27 years, but could never prove. When she finished, she looked up at him with tears in her eyes. There are more, she asked. Hundreds. All unopened. All hidden in a room that's not on any palace records. And someone knows you found them. Yes. Sarah folded the letter carefully. Handed it back to him. You understand what you're holding, don't you? This isn't just a letter. This is a confession. A warning. From a woman who knew she was in danger, I know. You understand that if you pursue this, they will destroy you. They will take everything from you. Your job, your reputation, possibly your life. Thomas met her eyes. What would Diana want me to do? Sarah smiled sadly. She would want you to burn it. To protect yourself. Diana never wanted anyone to get hurt because of her. But she also wanted the truth. More than anything, she spent years being silenced, being called crazy, being gaslit by people who were supposed to love her. And then she died, and they controlled the narrative. They made her into a saint and a victim, but they never let her speak for herself. Thomas nodded. So what do we do? Sarah was quiet for a long moment. People walked past them on the path. Joggers, dog walkers, tourists taking photos. Normal people living normal lives. None of them knew that 2 strangers on a park bench were holding evidence that could shake the British monarchy to its core. We need the other letters, Sarah finally said. All of them. Before they're destroyed? The room is locked. They'll be watching it now, and we need to move fast. Tonight, before they have time to remove everything. Thomas felt a spike of fear. You're talking about breaking in? About stealing from the palace? I'm talking about recovering stolen property. Those letters belong to Diana's sons. They were never meant to be hidden. Someone made that decision without authority. How do you know? Because I was there when she wrote some of them. I helped her mail some of them. And I know for a fact that she sent them to their intended recipients. The fact that they're unopened and hidden means someone intercepted them. Someone committed a crime. Thomas hadn't thought about it that way. But even if we get them, what then? We can't just walk into a newspaper office with a box of letters and expect them to print the story. No, Sarah agreed. We'd need verification, authentication, legal protection. And we'd need someone brave enough to publish it. That's a lot of ifs. But I know someone. A journalist. He worked on Diana's story for years. He's retired now, but he's honest. And he's not afraid of the palace. Thomas thought about the man in the basement. The cold eyes. The threats against his daughter? Sarah, they know where my daughter lives. If we do this, then we get her somewhere safe first. Before we move, before they know what we're planning, just like that, I still have friends. People who owed Diana favors. People who would help if asked. Thomas looked down at the letter in his hands. Diana's handwriting. Her fear, her courage, her desperate hope that someone someday would make sure she was heard. Okay, he said. I'm in. Sarah nodded. Tonight then. Meet me at the West Service entrance at 11. Bring everything you need to access that room. And Thomas? Yes. Once we do this, there's no going back. You understand that? I understand. But as they parted ways, Thomas wasn't sure he understood it all. He was a security guard, a divorced father who lived alone and watched football on weekends. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't brave, but as the day wore on, something shifted inside him. He thought about all the times in his life when he'd stayed quiet, looked the other way, chosen safety over truth. Small moments. Unimportant moments. This wasn't a small moment. At 6 that evening, he called his daughter. Emily, he said, I need you to do something for me. And I need you to not ask questions. Dad, what's wrong? I need you to pack a bag. Just for a few days. And I need you to go stay with Aunt Margaret in Scotland. Why? Please, sweetheart. I'll explain everything later. But right now, I need you to trust me. Can you do that? There was a long pause. Then, you're scaring me. I know. But you'll be safe with Margaret, please. Just do this for me. Okay, Emily said quietly. Okay, Dad. I'll go. After he hung up, Thomas sat in his flat as evening turned to night. He'd sent his daughter away. He'd committed to breaking into a secured room in one of the most watched buildings in Britain. He'd made himself an enemy of people with unlimited power and resources. But when he closed his eyes, he saw Diana's handwriting. Her words. Her truth that had been buried for almost 3 decades. At 10:30, he left his flat. He didn't know if he'd ever come back. At 11, he met Sarah at the palace. She handed him a black backpack. Cameras. Handled. I called in a favor with someone in security management. We have a 15-minute window when the basement cameras will glitch. 15 minutes? It's all I could get. It'll have to be enough. They moved through the shadows. Thomas used his access card. The door clicked open. They descended into the basement where it had all started. The hidden door was still there. Still unlocked? Thomas pushed it open. The room was empty. Every crate was gone. Every letter. Vanished like they'd never existed at all. Thomas felt his heart sink. No. Then Sarah gripped his arm, pointed there in the corner. A single crate, half hidden behind a support beam. They'd missed it when they cleared the room. Thomas rushed over. Opened it. 30 letters. Maybe 40. All addressed to Prince William. All from his mother. All unopened. Take them, Sarah whispered. Take them all. Now. Thomas started loading letters into the backpack. His hands were shaking. Any second, someone would come. Any second, this would all fall apart. 20 letters in the bag. 25. 30. Then they heard it. Footsteps. Multiple sets. Coming down the stairs, Thomas grabbed the last letters. Sarah pulled him toward the door. They ran. They didn't stop running until they reached Sarah's car. 3 blocks away, Thomas threw the backpack into the back seat. His lungs burned. His hands were cut from where he'd scraped them against the basement wall in their rush to escape. But they'd made it. They had the letters. Sarah drove fast, but not too fast. Breaking the speed limit would get them pulled over. Getting pulled over meant questions. Questions meant police. And police meant the letters would disappear. Did they see us? Thomas gasped. I don't know. Maybe does it matter now? She was right. It didn't matter. They'd crossed the line. There was no going back. They drove to a flat in Brixton. Small. Unremarkable. The kind of place nobody would think to look. Sarah unlocked the door, and they went inside. A man was waiting for them. 70 years old. White beard. Tired eyes that had seen too many lies and not enough justice. Thomas, Sarah said, "This is Martin Fletcher." He covered Diana's story for The Guardian. "Martin, this is Thomas Henley." The man who found the letters, Martin shook Thomas's hand. His grip was firm, strong. "Sarah called me this morning, told me what you found. I didn't want to believe it. But looking at you now, seeing that bag, I believe it." They spread the letters across Martin's dining table. 37 in total. All addressed to Prince William. All in Diana's handwriting. All sealed with red wax that had never been broken. "May I?" Martin asked, reaching for one. Thomas nodded. "That's why we're here." Martin carefully opened the first letter. His face changed as he read. Hardened, then softened, then filled with something that looked like rage and sadness mixed together. "Jesus Christ," he muttered. She was warning him. About what? Sarah asked. About the same people she warned about in the letter Thomas found? But this is more specific. She names someone. A palace advisor. She says he was involved in a plan to remove her from the equation. Her words exactly. Thomas felt sick. Does she say, how? An accident? She specifically says they were planning to stage an accident. She wrote this in July of 1997, 2 months before she died. The room went silent. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Normal London sounds. But in this flat, 3 people sat with evidence that Princess Diana had predicted her own death. Martin opened another letter, then another. Each one revealed more. Diana had documented conversations she'd overheard, meetings she wasn't supposed to know about, financial records she'd found. She'd written it all down for her son. Everything she knew. Everything she'd discovered. Why didn't she go to the police? Thomas asked. She tried. Sarah said quietly. I was with her. They dismissed her. Said she was paranoid. Under stress from the divorce? One officer actually suggested she see a therapist. They called her unhinged. The mad princess. Every time she tried to speak her truth, they twisted it. Made her sound hysterical. Martin was reading faster now. Moving through letters, taking notes. His journalist's mind working. This is bigger than I thought. She wasn't just documenting threats against her. She was documenting corruption. Money laundering through royal charities. Secret meetings with foreign governments. Decisions being made without Parliament's knowledge. Can you verify any of it? Thomas asked. Some of it. I'd need time, resources, access to records. But yes, some of this can be verified. And that's enough. That's all we need. If we can prove even part of what she wrote is true, the rest becomes credible. So what do? Martin looked at them both. We publish everything, every letter, every accusation. We give Diana the voice she never had. They'll deny it, Sarah said. They'll call it fake. Forged. Let them. We'll have the letters authenticated. Carbon dating on the paper. Handwriting analysis. We'll make this bulletproof. Thomas thought about the man in the basement. About his daughter in Scotland. About his quiet life that was gone forever. How long do we have? Not long, Martin admitted. Once they realize those letters are missing, they'll do everything they can to stop us. Injunctions, legal threats. They might even try to claim national security. Can they do that? They can try. But we're not going to give them time. I have contacts. Editors I trust. People who aren't afraid of the palace. We'll release this simultaneously across multiple platforms. Print. Online. International. Make it impossible to suppress. Sarah was reading one of the letters. Tears ran down her face. She loved him so much, William. She wrote to him about what kind of king he could be. What kind of man she hoped he'd become. She wanted him to know the truth about her. Not the fairy tale. Not the victim. The real her? Thomas picked up another letter. This one was dated August 28, 1997, 3 days before Diana died. The seal was still perfect. William had never seen this. Never knew his mother had written to him just days before her death. We have to be absolutely sure about this, Thomas said. Once we publish, we can't take it back. This will affect everyone, William. Harry. The entire royal family. Do you think Diana would want that? Martin asked. Would she want us to protect the institution that silenced her? Or would she want the truth? Thomas knew the answer. They all did. We publish, he said. Martin nodded. I'll start making calls. We'll need lawyers. security for all of us, a safe place to work. This is going to move fast. Over the next 48 hours, Thomas barely slept. Martin's flat became a war room. Laptops everywhere. Phones ringing constantly. Journalists and lawyers coming and going. They authenticated the letters. Every single one came back genuine. Diana's handwriting. Paper from 1997. Ink that matched samples from her known correspondence. They cross-referenced her. Claims. Found evidence to support many of them. Bank records that shouldn't exist. Meeting logs that had been classified. Testimonies from former staff who'd been too afraid to speak before but were willing now. The story was airtight, undeniable, explosive. On the third day, Martin got a call. His face went pale as he listened. "They're filing an injunction," he said when he hung up. "Trying to stop publication. They're claiming the letters are stolen property, that publishing them would violate privacy laws." "Can they win?" Sarah asked. "Maybe, but we're not waiting to find out. We publish tonight, all of it, before the courts can stop us." At 8 p.m., the story went live, simultaneously on 3 major news websites: The Guardian, The New York Times, Le Monde. All 3 publications had been given copies of the letters. All 3 published together. The headline was simple: Diana knew. Unpublished letters reveal princess predicted her death. Within minutes, the story exploded. Social media went insane. News channels interrupted their broadcasts. Websites crashed from traffic. The whole world stopped to read what Princess Diana had written in her final days. Thomas watched it unfold from Martin's flat. Watched as the truth he'd found in a hidden room spread across the planet in real time. Then his phone rang. "Unknown number," he answered. "Mr. Henley." It was the man from the basement. The one with the cold eyes. "You've made a terrible mistake." Thomas's hand tightened on the phone. "Have I? You have no idea what you've started. What you've destroyed? I think I do. I think I destroyed a lie that should have been destroyed 27 years ago." Noble words. "Let's see how noble you feel when this is over." The line went dead. Thomas looked at Sarah and Martin. Both of them were watching him. "They're coming," he said. "Let them come," Martin replied. "The story's out. There's nothing they can do now." But Thomas wasn't so sure. The letters were published. Diana's voice was finally heard. But the people who'd silenced her were still out there. Still powerful, still dangerous, and they wouldn't forget what Thomas had done. The first week after publication was chaos. The palace issued denials. Strong ones. They called the letters potentially fabricated documents from an uncertain source. They questioned the authentication. They suggested Diana had been unwell when she wrote them. It's paranoid, unstable. But the public didn't believe them. Not this time. Millions of people had read Diana's words now. They'd seen her fear, her courage, her desperate attempts to protect her sons and tell the truth, and they recognized something real in those words. Something that couldn't be faked. Thomas stayed in hiding. Martin had arranged a safe house in Wales. Small cottage. No internet. No cell service. Just Thomas and 24-hour private security that Martin's contacts had provided. Emily came to visit on day 6. Sarah had brought her from Scotland. When Thomas saw his daughter, he almost broke down. She ran to him, hugged him like she used to when she was small. "Dad, what the hell?" she said into his shoulder. "You're all over the news. They're calling you a whistleblower. A thief. A hero. A criminal." "What's going on?" Thomas told her everything. The hidden room. The letters. Diana's warnings. The choice he'd made to publish rather than stay silent. When he finished, Emily was quiet for a long time. "You did the right thing," she finally said. "Did I?" "I've destroyed our lives." "No. You gave a dead woman her voice back. That's not nothing." Thomas wasn't sure he agreed. But hearing his daughter say it helped. A little. The second week brought more chaos. Parliament launched an investigation. Not into Diana's death, but into how the letters had been hidden. Who had ordered it? Who had known? 3 senior palace officials resigned rather than testify. 2 more were suspended. The Prime Minister gave a speech, called for transparency, said the British people deserved answers. It was political theater, Thomas knew, but it was something. Then, on day 15, something unexpected happened. Prince William issued a statement. Short, carefully worded, but powerful. I have read the letters my mother wrote to me in her final months. Letters I never knew existed until they were published. I cannot express the anger I feel that these were kept from me. My mother's words, her fears, her love, all hidden by people who claim to be protecting me. I want the truth about what happened to my mother, and I want it now. Statement changed everything. With William demanding answers, the palace couldn't dismiss the story anymore. They couldn't call it a hoax or blame it on unstable staff. The future king had just validated everything Thomas had done. More investigations were launched. Real ones. American journalists started digging. French authorities reopened files on the car crash. Former palace staff started talking. People who'd been silent for decades suddenly found their courage. The man who'd threatened Thomas in the basement was arrested, along with 2 others, charged with obstruction of justice, destruction of evidence, conspiracy. The charges probably wouldn't stick, Thomas knew. People like that had lawyers, had connections. But it was something. On day 30, Thomas got a phone call from a number he recognized, Kensington Palace. He almost didn't answer. But Sarah, who was with him in the cottage, nodded. Take it. Thomas answered. Hello? Mr. Henley, a woman's voice. Professional. Clipped. This is Christine Dalton, private secretary to Prince William. His Royal Highness would like to meet with you, if you're willing. Thomas's mouth went dry. Why? To thank you. In person, I don't want thanks. I don't want anything. Nevertheless, he's requested the meeting. It would be at a private location, security provided, completely confidential. Will you come? Thomas looked at Sarah. She nodded again. Yes, he said. I'll come. 3 days later, Thomas was driven to a manor house in the countryside. No press, no cameras. Just security and staff who'd signed strict confidentiality agreements. William was waiting in a small study, jeans and a sweater. No formal attire. He looked tired, older than his years. But his eyes were clear, Mr. Henley, William said, standing. Thank you for coming. Thomas shook his hand. It felt surreal. Your Highness. Please sit. Can I get you anything? Tea, coffee? I'm fine. Thank you. They sat across from each other. For a moment, neither spoke. Then William leaned forward. I've read all the letters. Every one. Some of them 20 times. And I keep thinking, what if you hadn't found them? What if you'd just locked that door and walked away? I would have spent the rest of my life not knowing what my mother wanted to tell me. I'm sorry they were kept from you. So am I. But that's not your fault. You gave me a gift. The last words my mother wanted me to hear. Her truth. Her love. And I needed you to know that I'm grateful. Thomas felt emotion rising in his chest. She loved you very much. That's clear in every word she wrote. She did. And now I know she also tried to warn me. About the people around us. The institution. She wanted me to be different. To change things. To not let the machine grind me down the way it ground her down. What will you do? William smiled. Sad but determined. I'm going to finish what she started. Transparency. Truth. No more hidden rooms. No more silenced voices. It won't be easy. There are people who don't want change. But I'm going to try. For her, she'd be proud of you. I hope so. William paused. The palace wants to prosecute you. Did you know that? They're building a case. Theft. Trespassing. Breaking and entering. They have lawyers working on it right now. Thomas felt his stomach drop. I understand. I've told them to stop. I've made it clear that if they pursue this, I will testify on your behalf. I will tell the court exactly what those letters meant to me, what you did for me, and I don't think they want that. Thank you. Don't thank me. This is the least I can do. You risked everything for the truth. For my mother, that means something. He talked for another hour. William asked about Thomas's life, his daughter, his work. They weren't prince and commoner in that room. They were just two men connected by a woman who'd loved her children and wanted the world to know her truth. When Thomas left, William walked him to the door. One more thing, William said. There were hundreds of other letters. The ones they cleared out before you got back to that room. They're gone. Destroyed, probably. I'll never know what she wrote in those. I'm sorry. You saved what you could. That's more than anyone else tried to do. Thomas drove back to the cottage. Sarah was waiting with news. The palace had officially dropped all charges. They'd released a statement saying the letters were rightfully the property of the princess, and that Thomas had been instrumental in ensuring they reached their intended recipient. It was spin, politics. But it meant Thomas could go home, could see his daughter without fear, could rebuild his life. But his life had already changed. The story had made him famous, infamous. Interviews were requested daily. Book deals offered. Movie rights pursued. Everyone wanted a piece of the man who'd found Diana's hidden letters. Thomas turned them all down. This wasn't his story to profit from. It was Diana's. She'd already paid the highest price to tell it. 6 months after publication, Thomas stood in Kensington Gardens. At the Diana Memorial, it was early morning. The park was empty, except for joggers and birds. He'd brought a copy of one of the letters. The last one Diana had written to William. He'd asked the prince if he could read it at the memorial. William had said yes. Thomas read it quietly, to himself and to her memory. My darling William, if you're reading this, then I am gone. But I want you to know that I lived fiercely and loved completely. I made mistakes, many of them, but I never stopped fighting for what I believed was right, and I never stopped loving you and your brother. Be brave, my son. Be kind. Be truthful. Don't let them silence you the way they silenced me. The crown doesn't own you. You own yourself. Live the life you choose. Be the king you were meant to be, not the one they tell you to be. All my love, always, ma'am. Thomas folded the letter, placed it at the base of Diana's statue. The bronze princess looked down at him with kind eyes. Forever young, forever frozen in that moment before everything changed. I'm sorry it took so long, Thomas said to the statue. To her memory, but you were finally heard. A breeze rustled through the trees. Somewhere a bird sang. Before they hung up, Emily said something that stayed with Thomas. Dad, I'm proud of you. I know this year's been scary and hard, but I'm proud that when you found something wrong, you didn't look away. You did something. Not everyone would have. I just did what felt right. That's why I'm proud. Thomas walked away from the memorial, back to his life, his daughter, his small flat in Wimbledon. He was no longer a palace guard. That part of his life was over, but he'd found something else. Purpose, meaning, the knowledge that when it mattered most, and staying silent would have been easier and safer, he'd chosen truth. And in a world that often valued comfort over courage, that meant something. That night, Thomas called Emily. They talked for hours, about everything and nothing. About the future, about choices, about what kind of person you want to be when the easy path and the right path diverge. Before they hung up, Emily said something that stayed with Thomas. Dad, I'm proud of you. I know this year has been scary and hard, but I'm proud that when you found something wrong, you didn't look away. You did something. Not everyone would have. I just did what felt right. I know. That's why I'm proud. After the call, Thomas sat in his flat, quiet, alone, but not lonely. Outside, London hummed with its endless energy. Millions of people living their lives. Most of them would never face the choice he'd faced. would never have to decide between safety and truth. But some would. Some would find themselves in a basement or an office or a conversation where they saw something wrong, something hidden, something that should be brought to light. And Thomas hoped they'd remember Diana's story. Remember that speaking up mattered, that truth mattered, that sometimes one person with courage could change everything. He looked at the photo on his shelf, the only thing he'd kept from that night in the palace. A photo Sarah had taken of the first letter. Diana's handwriting. Her words. Her truth. "Thank you," Thomas whispered. "For trusting him. For giving him a purpose. For reminding him that even ordinary people could do extraordinary things when the moment called for it." Outside, the city continued. Life went on. But somewhere, in a way that was hard to measure but impossible to deny, the world was a little different. Because one guard had found a hidden room, had made a choice, and had given a silenced woman her voice back. It wasn't everything. It wasn't justice. It wasn't closure. But it was something. And sometimes, something was enough.